The Hall of First Tongues had not echoed with a human voice in 11,000 years. Now it echoed with one anyway, flat and unimpressed, asking a question that made the assembled trial council forget how to arrange their faces. Original font or modernized? Because if you want this readable in under a week, we should talk about which one you actually need. High Scholar Zyrex, 3 meters of crystalline robes and 4 eyes, none of which had blinked in recorded memory, simply stared. Darian Voss had not asked to be here. The Tribunal of Sundered Worlds had reached out to Earth's diplomatic envoy 6 months prior with a single, almost embarrassed request: humanity's reputation for pattern recognition, chess, cryptography, the absurd hobby of deciphering dead languages for fun that several species found bewildering, had reached the ears of the Convergence Archive. The archive held the Centaur Codex, a slab of black alloy covered in symbols from a civilization that had annihilated itself 30,000 years before any current species had developed agriculture. 47 species had attempted translation. 47 had failed, some catastrophically. The Velcrin linguistic team had developed a recursive psychosis trying to parse the verb structures, and 3 of them were still in care facilities. The trial was simple in concept: decipher one passage, any passage, well enough to prove the method sound. Get it right, and the archive would share resources humanity desperately needed, fusion stabilization formulas the tribunal had been still reviewing Earth's eligibility for the better part of a decade. Get it wrong, and humanity would join the list of species the tribunal quietly stopped calling for things. Darian had brought a notebook, 3 mechanical pencils, a thermos of coffee that the tribunal's biological safety officer had spent 40 minutes interrogating, and absolutely no ceremony. "You don't understand the gravity of this language," said Counselor Faith Soul, an Iridian whose translucent skin showed the agitated pulse of her thoughts. "The Centaur built sentences the way we build cities." 3 Velcrin scholars lost their minds attempting verb conjugation alone. "Sure," Darian said, not looking up from the slab. He'd been allowed 2 hours of unsupervised study, supervised, which was a contradiction nobody on the council seemed to find funny, but he privately did. "But you're all assuming the writing system is the hard part." "It's not. The hard part is that you're reading it vertically." The room went silent in the specific way that meant several intelligent species were simultaneously realizing they'd never questioned a 40,000-year-old assumption. "The Centaur text has always been read top to bottom," said High Scholar Zyrex, each word deliberate, the tone of someone explaining gravity to a child. "This is foundational. Every translation database in this archive operates on that premise." "Right, and every one of those 47 attempts failed." Darian tapped the slab with his pencil, carbon graphite against ancient alloy, a sound that made Faith Soul wince like it was sacrilege. "Look at the wear patterns on the stone. See how the bottom edge is smoother than the top, like thousands of years of fingers dragging across it? That's not decoration wear. That's thumb wear. You don't drag your thumb down a page when you're reading it. You drag it across, when you're holding it sideways and reading left to right, the way you'd hold a scroll while walking." He rotated the slab 90 degrees with both hands, grunting slightly at the weight, ignoring the synchronized intake of breath from 4 different species worth of throats. "There," he said. "Now your verb conjugation problem isn't a verb conjugation problem. It's a sentence stacking problem, because you've been reading 3 sentences as one impossible word salad." Zyrex's 4 eyes moved independently for the first time in the session, 2 fixing on the slab, 2 fixing on Darian, an expression tribunal officials later struggled to describe except as the face of someone recalculating their entire career. "That is..." Zyrex paused. "That is not in any methodology we've attempted." "Because none of you tried holding it like garbage," Darian said amiably. "No offense. You're treating this thing like a monument. The Centaur treated it like a grocery list, probably. Civilizations that write everyday things don't carve them for posterity, they carve them because rock was what they had. You've been doing forensic theology on what might just be someone's shopping notes." A Velcrin observer in the gallery made a noise that might have been a laugh and might have been the beginning of another psychotic episode. Nobody checked which. Darian flipped open his notebook, uncapped a pencil, and looked up at Zyrex with the same flat patience he'd had since walking in. So, original font or modernized? I can transliterate it character for character so your linguists can verify the logic, slower, but defensible to your counsel. Or I can give you a working modern translation with footnotes on ambiguous terms, faster, more useful, but you'll have to trust my interpretive calls on the back half where the alloy's pitted and I'm guessing at 3 symbols. You are asking us, Zyrex said slowly, how we would like the proof of an 11,000-year mystery formatted. I'm asking because it changes how long this takes and how much you can independently verify, Darian said. I'm not being clever. I'm doing paperwork. You want it to hold up, or you want it to be readable? Pick one, I'll lean that way, and we go from there. Faith Soul's pulse light had gone from agitated to something steadier, something almost amused. Original. We verify everything, scholar by scholar. We are not in the habit of accepting translations on faith, human or otherwise. Smart. Original it is. Darian began writing, and the hall watched a man with a mechanical pencil reduce 30,000 years of dead silence into a column of careful symbol-by-symbol notation, occasionally pausing to murmur things like okay, that one's doing double duty as both a noun and a directional marker, that's annoying, or wait, is this a typo or did they actually mean no, never mind, context fixes it. It took him 50 minutes. He filled 6 pages. He cross-checked the wear patterns twice more, adjusted 2 characters, and underlined a section near the bottom with visible satisfaction. This part's the good part, he said, turning the notebook so Zyrex could see. This isn't a historical record. It's a maintenance log. Someone complaining that the third tower's cooling array kept failing and that the engineers from the Eastern Guild, that's a proper grammatical complaint structure, by the way, they really did not like the Eastern Guild, never fixed it properly. Your Apocalypse archive has been guarding a 30,000-year-old workplace grievance. The silence that followed was not the odd kind. It was the kind that comes after a species realizes it has spent 11,000 years treating bureaucratic frustration as sacred scripture. High Scholar Zyrex set down the slab with hands that, for the first time in the session, were not entirely steady. You solved in 50 minutes, Zyrex said, what destroyed 3 minds and 47 careers. I solved it in 50 minutes because nobody let themselves consider it might be boring, Darian said, capping his pencil. You all assumed profound civilizations leave profound messages. Sometimes they leave a guy yelling about cooling systems. Humans figured that out early. Half of what we dug out of our own ground turned out to be tax records and complaint letters. Saves a lot of grief once you stop expecting poetry everywhere. Zyrex's eyes cycled through the council, then back to the human, then to the notebook, 6 pages of patient, unglamorous work that had just rewritten a chapter of galactic history into something closer to an HOA dispute. The tribunal, Zyrex said carefully, will need to revise several foundational assumptions. Probably, Darian agreed, capping his thermos. You'll want to start by checking if any of your other unreadable relics are just upside down. He didn't say it like a victory. He said it the way a man mentions he's pretty sure the smoke alarm just needs a new battery, mildly, helpfully, already reaching for his coat. Behind him, the Hall of First Tongues, silent for 11,000 years, filled instead with the quiet, mortified sound of an entire species recalibrating, while a human packed up his pencils and asked, not unkindly, whether anyone wanted a copy in the modern font after all, just in case.